Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of Monday, January 27th, 2020. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hart absent. Commissioner Dowell.
Here.
Commissioner Matson.
Here.
Commissioner Norwood.
Here.
Commissioner Sherman.
Here.
Vice Chairman Dowling.
Here.
Vice Chairman Williams. I'm sorry,
Here.
Chairman Williams.
Yes, yes, we're all going good here. Yes. Before we do the minutes, I would like to introduce our newest commissioner, Lindsey Matson. Welcome aboard. And would you say a few words about yourself?
Hi, honored to serve. I have a degree in architecture from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I've worked in a few different offices. I've worked in Fresno and I've worked in San Francisco at Mark Horton. And I, in the last 10 years, I've got a creative agency where we do what we call holistic branding. And so that just includes all the graphic elements and the programming also of tasting rooms for wineries, breweries, businesses of that nature. Oh, and I have an MFA in graphic design. And that's my bio.
Good. Thank you, Lindsey. We appreciate your service and volunteering. Very important. Okay, got another one? All right. Next item, approval of the minutes. Do I hear any additions, deletions, or corrections to our meeting minutes of December 16th? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Approving it?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so approved. Next item is each January we elect a chairman and a vice chairman for the commission, and that is our next duty. So we'll open up nominations first for the chairperson. Do I have any nominations?
I'll nominate Mr. Dowling.
Mr. Dowling? All right.
I accept.
All right. Do I have any other nominations?
You get to speak a lot extra. You get to read all the approvals and all that stuff.
Good.
Second that.
Good. Good. All right. So in that case, I'll close the floor. Brenda, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Dowell.
Aye.
Commissioner Matson.
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood.
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman.
Aye.
Chairman Williams.
Aye. So carried. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much.
Good. Okay, now I'll open up the floor to the vice chair nomination. Do I have any?
Wait a minute. That was the.
I thought that was the vice chair.
Oh, vice chair, yes, I'm sorry, all right. It's been a long day, no. All right, now we'll open up the nominations for the chairperson. Do I have any nominations, please?
Nominate Bob Williams, chairman.
Any other nominations? No, you're not going to jump in here, somebody? Come on. All right. Okay, close the nominations. All in favor, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Dowell.
Aye.
Commissioner Matson.
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood.
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Dowling.
Aye.
All right.
I have more to learn.
You have more to, no, you don't.
I'm merely a Padawan.
Padawan.
All right, good. All right, onward and upward. Do we have any informational reports and updates we're calling for?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission. Good evening. I just want to update the Commission on the Circle K project that came through originally a couple years ago and then more recently for an time extension. Just to let the Commission know that there has been some modifications due to the alley abandonment that we're allowing them to reduce some of their setbacks, mostly for landscaping purposes. And that's going to change up their site plan a little bit. It's not going to change up the overall approval, what you guys approved, what you saw, the design, none of that's changing. It's reducing some of their setbacks along Mingus Avenue to accommodate some of the other stuff that we have going on with them. This agreement is going to go to City Council for approval, but it's nothing that had to come back to the Commission for approval. But I just want to let you guys know what was going on with it.
Very good. Thank you. Anything else?
No, sir, that's it.
Okay, very good. The next item on our agenda is call the public. This is a time for the public to comment on any matter that's not on the agenda. I don't have any card, so does anybody want to? All right, sir. And
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes.
Ron Corbin, City of Cottonwood City Manager. Scott's been in the chair for a little while, but I wasn't sure. I think you guys met before we made the announcement, so I wasn't sure that you guys, I officially came and told you that he is the director. So I wanted to make sure
Yes.
this board,
Oh,
I know I
yes.
went to HPC, I went to council, but I don't think you guys have met since he was appointed, but Scott Ellis is our permanent, well, community development director.
Probationary.
as of these 5 minutes.
As of right now.
Is there something I need to know?
As of right now, he is, it was a competitive process. We had some good candidates. We had a board meet to review. They had to do a presentation. They had to answer, they had 3 boards to go through, a presentation, a Q&A, and some scenario-based. And he rose to the top. We had vendors or contractors, local business members represented on the selection panel. We had a community development director from Sedona. She came down to help us with the process. So it was a intense application and interview process, and he rose to the top, and we're excited that he accepted our offer. And not only is he our director, but he has already started to fill some other positions. He's made a job offer to fill his old position, so we're moving forward and getting things done. I'm very excited that Scott accepted the job.
Yes, congratulations, Scott.
Thank you.
Yes, we're very pleased that Mr. City Manager, of that appointment, and we think it's a great step forward, and look forward to working with Scott in days coming in the months. And stick around, will you?
I plan on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you,
All
Mr.
righty.
Corbin.
Any other? Okay, moving on. Old business. PCU 16004, Terra Bene. Consideration to revoke a conditional use permit to allow agricultural land use on property on South Willard Street. Mr. Paget, you're got the floor, sir.
I'll start eventually here. Thank you, Chairman Williams. As you mentioned, this is a project regarding the Terra Bene project. The general location is on Willard, just south of 89A, very close to the Cottonwood Airport. A little history of the project timeline. Received its original approval on January 25th of 2016. Let me back up a little bit. The project is a farm project. Give a little bit of summary. What their proposal is that they would originally were going to grow farm-to-table type crops. There would be stands on site that would sell that produce to local individuals here. It's gone through a little iterations of waiting for irrigation lines, the reclaimed water lines, other various types of improvements needed so that they would have water at the site. Weather has been a factor a couple of times in their planting process. After that original approval in January of 2016, they had a 6-month extension in January of 2017 and December of 2017, another 6-month extension. 12-month extension in June of 2018, and then another 12-month extension just granted the last June 18th of last year. This was the site plan that they showed, just that would have various different stands and different areas of the farm project for the different types of gardens or fruit trees and plantings. Some of the pictures going back a couple of years, June of 2018. Some of these are June of 2018 when the project was Then in July of 2019, there was some overgrowth occurring. Some weeds were coming back on the site. We've worked with the property owner on removing some trailers that were stored on site, cleaning out minimal areas. This is one of the areas that they screen their rock, getting the rock out of the soil. It's another side of the rock pile. Then after the last approval in June of last year, Commission asked and placed a couple of stipulations on the project to do some general cleanup and come back with a status of what was going on. This is October of last year, a couple of months after the last extension was granted. And there is still some debris and generally the ground cover and plant material hasn't changed significantly. And these were some pictures taken earlier today. So you can sort of see the transition of when things were occurring, what the subject site looks like today. There is still some debris on the site. You can sort of see that down in this. So that is what I have to present. So what we have done on Commission's direction is send a letter to the applicant asking for basically the project to begin and to address some of the issues of the weeds and the debris that was on site. Then after that, a letter was sent to the applicant with your direction to consider tonight the possible revocation of the project. And so that's your decision before you tonight, whether it be a revocation or it is currently in the 12-month approval that was given, but with stipulations. The applicant is here this evening, so should you have any further questions regarding the timeline of the work that's being done. We did receive some correspondence from the applicant, and she has expressed that, and I'll let her go into this in more detail. Some of the issues that she does have with the site is people coming onto her property, trespassing, other people doing some of the dumping on the large project, theft, vandalism, damage. So she has dealt with certain difficulties just of being the property owner and trying to take care of those issues, and that has caused a delay in time and money. So I believe that's all I would present to you this evening. As I said, the applicant is here this evening. I'm available for any questions before we bring her up.
Mr.
Can we review the stipulations or the stipulations we had for the last extension? Thank you.
Sure. Yes, no, those stipulations should have been in your staff report on a letter dated December 17th.
Yeah, in the last back of the last page of that. of the staff report.
Right.
I think you referred to number 2, any fire hazard trash be removed within 60-day time
Correct.
frame from that approval. And has that been done?
No.
All right. All right. That was, and I believe that was our concern, that we'd go in with a 12-month extension as long as we were seeing some progress. It was the main thing we were concerned about at this point in time, or at that point in time. And didn't want to approve that, it was approved based that was going to happen. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And the applicant is here, please. Your name for the record, please.
Verde Selma.
Yes, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Oh, okay. We've had security issues along, several security issues regarding vandalism, trespass, illegal dumping, and these type of things. And so as a result of this, we have, some of the things that we have done have been to secure the area. And largely, and it would be, if you want to, okay. I'll show you the main places where our biggest concerns are. And if you can go back to the map that shows Willard, with all the properties. Okay, but the gate is one. Okay, well, that will do. Okay. Which one? All right. Along here, this is would be the eastern border of the property. Here, this is Willard, and this is the eastern border, and this is the wash. And our gate is right here, and there's another foot traffic gate right here. This gate is continually, our signs are stolen. They cut the fences, and in this area, no, let's see, that's down too low. Right about right here, there is fence cutting that has occurred. We have posted no trespassing signs, and they have been stolen. Along in this area, there is dumping from some of the people. Somebody is dumping from on over their property line onto our property line. And every single person who owns property on this line, well, not every single person, because some of them are new residents, but the majority of the people on here have been notified that the fence is not on the property line, and that we put the fence higher up. And so, but there's still dumping that is occurring in this area, in that middle area. This is the main gate off of, that's Clover, I believe, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, and there have been instances where our chains are cut, the locks are stolen, the gates then are left ajar, and we've had theft. Some of our equipment has been stolen. We did make police reports. And so there have been issues regarding trespass and things that are occurring on this property that we have had to address. What we want to do is go ahead and get all, as you say, get these things to where we can plant. But before we do that, we want to secure the property, and we are in a design review position at this point, and I wish I could tell you more, share more of the details about it, but I can't at this moment because it's still in the design phase. To secure, to put some security there. One of the ideas that I can share is in this vicinity right here is the tank. And one of the things that we're looking at doing is putting security cameras on the tank. I have been told, and I don't know if this is true, that there are people who live in this area who already have security cameras on their houses. I don't know if that is true. But one of our options
People live there what?
have security cameras. I don't know if it's true.
Sir? No.
And so what, security cameras, all that does is catch, you know, and then what do you do? And it's not, we're not looking at catching somebody and doing something about it unless it continues and it turns into something deeper than what it is now. We do believe we have a solution, and our solution will not dramatically affect the overall plan, other than the bigger picture of what we might find. We might end up losing some of these, well, we'll always have these access and the fire access, and we need to be able, let's see right there, we need to be able to keep this gate open as fire told us. And so we have to do something about the security on this gate, and the security on this gate, and the security along the most eastern border here. This is the orchard, and we don't have any issues with the orchard, what we're planning with the orchard at this time. Our biggest issue at this point is security on the property. And many of the things that we're dealing with right now have to do with that. And the overgrowth has occurred. We have taken it down. We started to move some of the dirt along here, and then I received a letter. And so we stopped, because in the event that the permit is revoked, we're not going to invest any more money in clearing the land and doing it, you know, readying it for planting in the event the commission decides to revoke the permit. And so that's where we are. And if it turns out that you do not revoke the permit and we do continue, and it does require our security, one of our options, if security might require another permit, at which point I would come to you and request it, or go to the, go first and get the application and see what we have to do. But we don't believe that that's going to be necessary. We think we have the security solution with or without security cameras that would be housed somewhere along in there. So, and I think that's what I have at this point, unless you have any questions.
Yeah, I'm sure we do, yeah. Commissioner Dell, I'll start with you.
When was the last time you made a police report?
I would have to ask my contractor. I should have, and I did not. One of our trailers was, let's see, there it is. We were keeping one of our trailers about in here, and it was stolen. We've had vandalism on 2 of our backhoes that we've had there, and when he told me that he talked to him, and at some point somebody told him there's nothing that they can do, that we would have to get security cameras to prove it. And so that was one of the things that we were doing. And so to my understanding is that we've made 3 police reports.
Have any of those 3 police reports been since we've approved this last extension?
In any of the occurrences or the reports? Many of the occurrences have been since you have approved it, yes. This one right here, we have had incidents of dumping, trespass, and theft since here. The police told my contractor not to worry about reporting trespassing signs being stolen, because that happens all the time. So, yeah, we tried, but.
Who's your contractor?
Joe Mulcair.
Sure.
And he did report, he told me, you know, I don't have a copy of the report, that he made a report to the police about the theft, the trailer theft, and the vandalism on the backhoes and some of his equipment.
So what you're telling me is the items that were taken are prohibiting you now from clearing that lot, like they should be?
The trailer is gone. What the trailer is stolen and has not been returned or found.
No, what I'm saying is you have one item here that needed to be addressed, really. And that's why you have a crowd over here. You had one item, which was to make sure that the hazard trash had been removed so that we didn't have a fire thing. And so what I'm asking is, were the items that were stolen items that you needed to clear this lot so we didn't have a fire hazard?
No, the trailer was stolen before, the trailer was stolen before June 18th, but the vandalism has occurred after. And the vandalism on the equipment is used to clear up some things.
What type of vandalism are we talking about?
It was on the backhoe. I'm not a mechanic, I don't know. All I know is that Joe told me that his machinery was vandalized. That was one of the reasons why we had the fenced area down below locked inside, so we could keep the equipment in. And so that some of the equipment was not in, it was up on top while they were using it, and they were straining the rocks to get the rocks out. Now, we have since removed, taken the backhoes off, the strainer is still there, and the rock pile is down. But the vandalism occurred at a time when we needed the equipment to do some of this.
How many work hours would you estimate you've been on that site working since this last extension?
That I have been, me
not just
personally,
you,
Joe,
that we've had work going on?
I would say 30.
30 hours?
That's a week, 60, 40. I would say I would say 30 because they did some clearing.
So 30 hours of work from June 18th until today?
Probably.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Well, I'll let you have a chance to hit this. Look, Commissioner Sherman, your question.
Every time I drive by there, it looks the same to me. I never see anything change. I know there have been a number of people who've come here to express their concern about the fire hazard, the dumping. Given the fact that you've had so many extensions over almost 4 years, and I don't really see much progress being made, I don't know that extending this, we'd see much more done. So I don't know.
It's we want to address the security issues is what we're doing, and part of those security issues involve removal of what you're calling debris, which is equipment.
Excuse me, are you through?
I'm done.
There. Mr.
I'd like to ask you one question. Could you tell the board why it's taken so long, or why you haven't developed the property any more than what you have? What's the reason for not having the property developed the way you originally scheduled that you originally? I know you had the water issue, but that was about 2 years ago. So from about 18 months to 2 years ago, what's prevented you from developing the property the way you designed it to be developed?
The water was about 2.5 years.
Right.
The water was not just getting it to the property, it was getting it from one side to the other on both sides, and then it was running. The water was about 2.5 years, and now we've had from that point we've had the trespassing issues, and then having to go back and redo things that we have already done to get it back to where we're ready to work.
How would the trespassing issues prevent you from developing the property the way you originally planned?
The vandalism that it's not just trespassing walking across the land, okay? It's trespassing, and while they're doing it, there's trash and debris that is being left, and there is the vandalism. At one point, and this was before we had applied for the permit, but it's this type of vandalism that occurs. There were people who tagged the water tank, And we immediately had to go in there and repaint and get the tagging covered up. And this is before the project, I understand, but it's issues like that that we have to go in, and it takes time to go in and get it done in order to then move on. In the meanwhile, now what we have is we had the land cleared, and we had many of the Spanish broom gone, and now with all these other delays, we're going to have to go in there and clean them out again. And so that's what the delays are.
Do you think if you went full charge in developing the property that these little minor things that have happened are major to your viewpoint, but do you think that if you were on the site developing it on a regular basis, that those incidents would have prevented you from further development?
It's possible.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Vice Chairman.
Yep. All right. This is difficult because I think that everybody wants the same thing, which is to get that property, is to have something happen with that rather than be vacant and barren. And I think that was what we all kind of expressed the last time we were here, and that's why we put forth the extension, but with the caveats added to it to try and make, and I think the idea there was to try and keep things moving. I fear that it's sort of I fear we're sort of in a vicious circle where things are happening which are preventing you from developing, but then not developing may be a large portion of what is allowing the things to happen. If there were people out there on a daily basis working and doing stuff and being visible, it might be much less prone to being vandalized or violated in some fashion. I just think that it's really hard when you're really hoping to get something great to happen, and then it doesn't, and it doesn't, and it doesn't, and it starts to feel, it's kind of like stubbing your toe on the same corner of the refrigerator every morning. At some point, you just need to put on a shoe or move the refrigerator. I think that I just think we're sort of in a pickle here where you're in a spot where you feel like you can't get done what you need to get it working, and we're in a spot where we feel like we've been trying to inspire that and it's not happening. So we're sort of both not getting what we want out of it, and like everybody said, when we as citizens or members of the commission drive by it and it's not seen very much, or when, for example, per Commissioner Dowell's question about how much work has been done, and we get an idea of 30 hours over the last, and I know that being in engineering and working with construction, I know that construction hours are a little bit different than a regular hour. But still, just that number overall is kind of, you have to understand how that would make anybody kind of go, wait a minute, you've had a year and a half to do this, and out of that year and a half of time, only 30 hours were actually spent doing it.
Okay.
At least that's how it kind of comes off to us. I just have to, like I said, I'm really torn. I really want it to happen, but at the same time, I feel like if we give another extension, or if we don't put some teeth or some impact into what's happening there, then we don't really have at this point the expectation that it's going to happen.
So what would you want me to get done in 60 days?
I believe whatever was, I think it's more about than just what gets done in 60 days. I believe there was a requirement for some cleanup of fire-related trash and items. And from what I understand, that is still in place. So I would say, all I really would say is whatever we originally agreed to in the original extension, which was the 2 items on that list, I believe were, the main item was any fire hazard or trash be removed within a 60-day time frame. And what's tricky is that part of the fire hazard is going to be the Spanish broom and the vegetation. So you can go in and clean it off, but if you don't redevelop within the time frame for regrowth of the possible fire hazard or whatever's getting dumped there, then we're going to always be chasing chasing our tail around a tree by saying, well, I can't go in and do that. Yeah, I mean, so I just would simply ask that this have been addressed, but I think that we started asking for, I think we had a 60-day time frame from when we approved the extension in
June 18th.
June 18th. So, within 2 months after that, I think many of us were asking Jim, hey, where are we at with that? What's going on? And we're getting people asking us, say, hey, what's going on with that project? And we come in, and so, even by August, I think, by August of last year, it would have been, or by, 2019, it would have been good to see a checklist, something actually done and maintained, but I don't see that. At least from the pictures that we've seen, it seems like it goes through a cycle of yearly die-off and regrowth. Die-off and regrowth is kind of what the pictures have shown me based upon what I saw. I fear that if there's not active work ongoing, that cycle will simply continue. And related to fencing and dumping and security, I don't have a grand answer for that, but I think that, if there was somebody on the site all the time, or if there was an actual, if it was developed to the point where there was somebody placed there to keep an eye on it, or if, because the eventual development plan that was the hand-sketched one showed booths and access ways and roads. What I'm getting at, I guess, is if there's problems now with access, dumping, violations, trespassing, I would hate to see what happened. It would be, I don't know if it would get any better if it was finally developed. I would hope it would, but I think everybody is at some point just hoping to see something like that.
And part of what we're planning will address those issues. It will benefit the project as a whole. It's going to increase the availability of planting property, and do a difference in row crops and hoop. There'll be more surface area for hoop houses.
Right.
And so that's where we are in terms of planting. And the Spanish broom that has regrown at this point is far less than it was when we first started and first cleared it. And so it's not nearly the land isn't nearly now what it was before we cleared it for the first time. And so we could, fire hazard, come in and do the 60-day fire hazard. The issues that we have is we really do go in and clean up after other people have come in and dumped. Mm-hmm. And when we first started, and as you're driving by, as you're driving on Willard, no matter which direction, if you look toward the east, you can see the crest of the hill. And you can't, at the crest of the hill, you can't see anything on the other side from the crest. And that is where a lot of these issues are occurring. And we really do have a solution that I will probably be able to share in 6 to 8 weeks, but it's not at, that particular idea is not developed enough yet to do that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, who are you working with on this solution? Like, you've mentioned it a couple of times. Is this your construction?
It's the property owners and my construction team.
Okay, so there's no architect or planner or?
Well, that's part of
That's part of
our team. Yeah.
Okay. And then I had a second question, which is, some of this seems to be a resources issue, and if you were to get another extension tonight, would you be able to invest more than 30 hours over the course of the next few months to?
Yes.
I tend to agree. I think having people on site will prevent so many of these problems.
I don't disagree with you.
So yes, that is able to happen. The reason, I guess I'm just wondering if the reason there were only 30 hours invested before is because of an issue with resources.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Okay, if that's not the case, that's good.
So, I mean, in the generality of mind, yeah, I think we all want to see it go ahead, but I just feel like, with the, you know, I'm hammering my thumb, and I think that maybe a lot of your adjacent property owners may feel that way as well. We've gotten a lot of feedback that way, and just from other citizens that keep saying, hey, what's going on with that? Why is it taking so long? So.
Selma, we've never seen any financial data on this project. It's very ambitious. We know it was going to be built in a day or a year, but it would appear that it is lacking of financial resources to really put out a full-blown construction crew to go in there and start clearing this site like you would see on a normal development. It's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to require a lot of man hours. I think that's something that needs to be worked on, along with a more detailed development plan if we were to go forward. We haven't seen these things.
I don't think it was part of the requirement.
No, I understand that, but we're getting concerned now that, you know, when a project gets in financial trouble, we don't want to keep kicking that can down the road.
Okay, where are you getting the idea that it's in financial trouble?
Well, nothing's happening. And that's an indication that there's not adequate resources behind the project, to me, to really complete your plan. Yeah, to start.
So you're thinking that might be one of the issues.
Yes.
But you haven't determined that, or nobody's told you?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a concern. That,
Short of us being informed of what the reason is.
Yeah, other than security.
I understand.
Yeah, okay.
I understand your concern there.
Right,
and,
yeah.
Finances wouldn't be one of the issues that we would consider. We're committed financially to the project. The finances aren't an issue for the progress of the project. The details of what we are doing right now are the issue at hand.
Right.
And we want to create a project that is beneficial and is pretty. And
Yes.
we're not trying to put something together that is haphazard. And yeah, certainly there are delays, and it sounds bad, but there are issues that we want to make sure are secure before we move ahead, and one of them is securing that east wall.
Have you considered possibly taking on a smaller project and build it out and get permits as you go along and phase this? That's a large parcel of land.
The application was produced in phases.
Well, yeah, but I guess we're talking about maybe taking a step back and saying, okay, maybe we ought to do 2 acres or 3 acres and get this, really get going, do something, and then step
It's possible.
down.
That's an idea.
I mean, that's just a potential alternative. This conditional use permit is for a fairly sizable and requires quite a lot of financial support and manpower. And I think those are lacking at this point, based on what we're seeing, or that's our perception. So, but anyway, okay. So really, the security thing is, and I can appreciate that. The security is a real problem.
It's a real problem.
Yeah, and there. Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't have any slips from anybody in the public. All right, you need to fill out a slip, please, at the back. No, I want to, would you please get a slip for you? Pardon? Yes, you can come up and then fill a slip out, please, sir.
Up here?
No.
They're at the back of the room.
You did, yeah. If you will, please, sir. We'd appreciate it.
Do we have a date on when the water was approved? When the final water connection was made? Do we have a date on when the final water connection was made? No? How are we going to proceed with this? Is somebody going to ask whether or not we want to move to reopen this? How's that going to work?
Sir?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay, we'll have the first gentleman, then we'll... Yes, sir, your name, please, and speak in the microphone, please.
Make the motion.
Stay in the back row or stay come up here?
We'll stay right there.
Okay.
Yeah, and your name, please, for the record.
Civic.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's confusing about this to me is polluted soil generally is something that is undesirable. Now, is this a plan to unpollute the soil using agriculture? Because, I mean, in the past, all I've heard is, people getting heavily fined by government because they've polluted the soil. They've even arranged for an international trade that they could take some of this, American companies were taking it down into Mexico to put it in their soil. We have that sort of problem here, and it's like you want to, I'm wondering, is this supposedly an agricultural scheme for cleaning up the soil? No?
Not that we're aware of, no. We haven't been advised that there's ever been a pollution problem on that site. Particular site, it's been vacant forever.
Generally, I'm aware of a lot of pollution problems,
Yeah.
and they're very difficult to resolve. I know
Yes.
one, for example, where some of these tank loads of chemicals, the tanks break, it gets down
Yeah.
into the water table, taken into the river,
Yes.
and polluting up cities.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's rather confusing, as I said.
Yeah, this site has always been vacant. It was not an industrial site or anything like that previously, so that, to our understanding, and I think we've known that site forever as being just a vacant site, and itself has not been polluted as far as we know.
Yes, but it was an industrial site.
Well, it's zoned for potential industrial development. It's never been developed with industrial development, and the only industrial development is a warehouse facility right next door to it. But and there's some warehouses up by the airport, but there's nobody up there. I guess you could say the airport may be polluting the soil in some cases, but nothing we're aware of, and that was not an issue here, sir.
The only thing they have in the warehouse is potato chips.
Yeah.
Okay, that's,
Yes.
that's good.
Frito-Lay's
That's good.
warehouse. They store potato chips there.
Thank you, sir, though. That's a good point. Thank you very much. Yes, sir, your name, please.
My name's Wayne Ott. Can I use your pointer? First, I'd like to say I'm from Mesquite Springs, and everybody that I am aware of is in favor of this project. It's not a problem. In fact, when Bernadette came and introduced herself to us, she walked the property and along our property lines and our lots and told us what was going to go on. We were very much in favor of it. The problem is we have not seen results. And the area right in here where the trash is, that's one area of concern because that hasn't been taken care of. And the other thing I'd like to make clear is I am friends with everybody that lives on that property line, and I know that none of those people are trespassing. None of the people along that property line have gone onto your property. They're all friends of mine. And in fact, there is a section of fence right there that we have been told was cut. It wasn't cut, it was never finished. It's a barbed wire fence with steel poles, and they're about, 10, 12 feet apart. The last 10 or 12 feet was across, because it's a staggered fence line. The last 10 or 12 feet was never completed. So it really bothers myself and my neighbors to get a letter, and we did get a letter, accusing us of trespassing and accusing us of cutting the fence. And as far as I know, there has not been any trespassing at all, and the fence definitely was not cut. It was never completed. We're in favor of the project. We're excited that it would be farming instead of commercial. Obviously, you'd think why. We just are concerned that some things haven't happened, and As far as the property line and the fence, if you recall, you and I stood at the corner of the fence. And
Sir, talk to us, please, the commission, just the commission, please.
Okay, and I said to Bernadette, I said, right here is where you're putting the post. Do you know where the property line is? And she said, yes. And I said, then you're not concerned about this side of the property line, and she said, no. And when we received the letter, everybody along that property line made sure that they have nothing of their personal items on the property of the project. And that's been removed and fences have been done. So I think we have tried to help out, and we're again in favor of the project. And I think it'd be beneficial to all of us, especially for the overall view of the drive-by when you see nothing done, you see the farmland going on. But it does concern me that people think that people from our property, for some reason, are trespassing. I will say that there is occasion where people have come into my yard, and because the fence has not been completed, there's a pathway from there into Mesquite Springs. And we have had people come across, and you know, where the heck do you come from? And, well, we just came from over there. So I agree that she may have trespassers, because people have come from her property onto our property because there is an access there because that fence was not completed. So I would agree with her that there could be trespassing there. But I can almost guarantee 100% it has not come from our property. The only people I know that ever went on that property was to walk their dogs when there was no fence. And when we were told not to do that, then that all stopped.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ott.
Okay.
We appreciate your input.
Thank
as
you.
a neighbor. Thank you very much.
Could I continue the response? Is that all right? Could I continue to respond to Mr. Ott?
Yes, if you'd like to.
Thank
Before I close the floor, yes.
Thank you, and I do remember meeting with you, thank you. And I'm not accusing you specifically of trespass, please.
Well, I just want to clarify that because it was
Because it
not
sounds
said.
that, okay. I'm not accusing them. I do know that the issue is there. And before the fence was up, there was an embankment and they had accessed it, which was before the project. I did meet with them, and everything that Mr. Ott said is true, other than the fence was completed at one point. And this is where the security camera that we're talking about might help. But I do know that there are people, and they might come up from that other area. Can't see it from on the corner. It would be, well, in this is Mr. Ott's land right there. And this, there's the fence. I mean, there's the.
Right in there.
Right here is where it is, and this is rough. It's real rough and water drainage there. And there is another subdivision here, and it's rugged land. And when we first started clearing, it was clear to us that kids had created, and I hated to do it, but we had to take it down for liability issues. They'd created some really cool bike ramps, and but we had to take it out because of the liability issues. And so it could very well, and it could have been those same kids. I can't imagine that Mr. Ott would have tagged the tank. And so, that just looked to me like gang tagging is what it looked like to me. So this is the issue along this line here. And if we were able to secure this, it would solve that entire problem. And I think that we can. And the problem is they traverse it and they go out this. But we have to have a dual exit. We don't feel it is safe to enclose it without a second exit from the property.
Okay. Question. If the commission were to revoke this conditional use permit tonight, would you continue on trying to secure the property, or are you just going to?
I want the property secured. The property is, it's a valuable piece of property, not, yes, financially, but it's valuable in terms of, if you Google the city of Cottonwood, it is literally, the center of Cottonwood is Willard and 89A, and we're 100 yards off the center of Cottonwood. It's the heart of Cottonwood. What a beautiful thing to have this type of life growth as the heart of Cottonwood.
Yes.
And so, and we would like it to be a part of the providing food in a wide variety of ways and services, because you're right, it is going to, when it is in place, it is going to employ a lot of people. And we're looking forward to that day.
All right. Thank you very much. No other comments? I'm going to close the floor to the public. Commissioner O'Dowd, we'll start with you. Comments, please.
I think, well, I'm going to agree with Commissioner Dowling. The failure to develop it is leading to these problems. I don't believe 30 hours is sufficient. It's been at least 6 months. I'll tell you that I believe everybody wants this type of great project in this community. I have very fond memories of going to farmer's market as a young boy, and we went to the orchards, and this is what we did, and I think everybody wants this. The problem is it's not happening, and it pains me to revoke it, but I'm sorry, that's where I'm gonna sit right now.
Mr. Matson.
I tend to agree with the commissioner's notes. I feel like if, again, I hate to continue beating this point, but if there were just work happening regularly on the property, that a lot of these problems would be mitigated by the work itself. I'm also concerned that if this got another extension, would it get the same amount of attention that the previous extensions provided? Like, would you get another 30 hours of work for 6 months? It's just an incredibly slow pace, and it's so slow that there is a cyclical vegetation issue. It allows you to get underwater with some of the trespassing and vandalism problems. It just needs a quicker clip of work. And so if the council were to approve this, you'd need some guarantee that the work would jump exponentially in speed. And if not that, then I have to also say that I think revoking is probably the best course of action.
Mr. Chairman?
I agree with both of them. I think it's just a cycle that's just going to continue, and unless there's some real progress made, I would say even just in 30 days where you just get in there and you start working at it, I think a lot of those problems would disappear. So I would have to agree that I think revoking it would be the way to go.
Ms. Norwood.
Yes, I agree with everything that has been said, and I also would just like to add that for sure the property had water for at least 18 months, the past 18 months, and really nothing has really occurred during that period that showed any progress toward your original plan. So I personally think that we should revoke the conditional use permit.
Vice Chairman.
All right. So what I'm understanding is that there is another, trying to figure out how I want to word this correctly. There's another sort of version of this project that is sitting out there for just, I'm getting the sense that there's like, I'm being told there's another version, we just need a few more weeks. I think that it might behoove everybody if perhaps, you know, I think most of the commissioners would agree, if we were to go ahead and revoke this CUP, that would give the opportunity to come in with the fresh ideas right off the bat, and then maybe with those fresher ideas, it might inspire the development at a faster pace than we have seen. I don't think anybody wants to be seen as stepping on or trying to slow down progress. As we've heard, your neighbors are eager to have it done, and we were all on board with having it done. And I think that those statements end up creating the dilemma we're in, which is everybody wants to have it done. I know not everybody's paying for it or responsible for it, but we are in a way as a community by hoping it gets done and letting it keep going. I just think that maybe it would be better to, if we have to stop that right now, to try and get a little bit of a reality check and come up to, you know, decide what is really going to be happening. Because I know the last time I had asked the staff, I said, well, what are they planning on doing? And I was, you know, the info I got was kind of like, well, they don't really want to say yet. So I understand wanting to manage that, but I also at the same time, if there had been steps coming forward, you know, a couple of months ago near the end of last year, where there was like, here's what we're trying to do, and we saw some actual visual representations of what was hoped to happen, it would be a lot easier, or it would be a lot more difficult to say that we should revoke that conditional use. As it is right now, I just don't know that, I would be doing my responsibility, I would be fulfilling my responsibilities or my duties to this seat and to this community if I just let it keep dragging without sort of trying to say, stop, we need to wait a minute and get together on this and come up with something that is actually possible to be done. I don't know, it's a hard way to kind of put it, but I'm not saying it very well, but what I'm saying is we all want the same thing, but at this point, I don't know that we're going to accomplish that with what we've currently been doing. And as they say, the definition of an insanity is if you just keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And I just don't know that that's the best thing to do at the moment. But I would certainly love to see this come back with some improvements or with a different tack at how to get it done. And if that gets it done, then I think we'll all have gotten what we wanted at that point.
We approved this 3.5 years ago. We knew it wasn't going to be developed overnight. It was going to take time. But we had the sense that you had the resources and the team in place, contractors, designers, whatever else you needed, experts, to do it. What I'm seeing is that's not happening. That didn't happen. And you only have is this drawing and this concept in your mind. I think for us to go forward with this would require a much more professional approach, like any developer would be putting in a housing subdivision or whatever. Even though this is an agricultural project, it still demands this size project, this ambitious project, deserves and really requires the financial package, the team package, the professional package, including, you know, much better and seeing progress if we were to do it. We keep kicking this can down the road, and in my opinion, nothing's going to happen. I'm not really too confident of what I'm hearing tonight that a whole lot's going to happen here. Maybe some new concept, but as far as actual work on the site, 30 hours is just totally unacceptable to me. So with that, Mr. Vice Chairman, I will entertain a motion, sir.
I believe Commissioner Norwood volunteered to throw that one up there.
All right, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would move to revoke the conditional use permit 16-004 for the reasons that were put forth by the board members here this evening.
Yes. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dowell seconds Commissioner Norwood's motion. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Dowell?
Aye.
Commissioner Matson?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Dowling?
A pained and sad aye.
Chairman Williams?
Yes, aye. Motion is carried. The conditional use permit for this property, 16004, has been denied. On to our next item of business. New business, CUP, Conditional Use Permit 190005 for the Verde Valley Homeless Coalition for the Conditional Use Permit to operate a drop-in center at their new location.
Thank you, Chairman Williams. As you stated, this is a conditional use permit for the Verde Valley Homeless Coalition. Little background, they previously operated at 14 South Main for approximately a year. When they realized they had outgrown that location, began looking for another. They found one on 15th Street that we did consider at one point. That project was withdrawn by the applicant. So here we are now at 654 North Main Street. Back in October, staff did work with the applicant, and we granted a temporary use permit. One of the requirements of that was that the applicant come to the commission with an application for a conditional use permit, which is what's in front of you tonight for permanent approval of that location. Where this is generally 10th Street and Main on the south side of Main Street. It's a commercial C1 light zoning. The operation would be identical to how it has operated in the past at the at the Main Street location. They offer job search assistance, counseling, life skills. This is also would be the location for the cold weather shelter. Anytime the weather is forecast to be 35 degrees or lower, they have approval to have 20 people, a maximum of 20 people at that facility for an overnight cold weather shelter operation. They've provided certain things that have been operating fairly successfully with their business plan, protocols for how to notify the police if there is an issue of concerns for the neighbors. One of the previous requirements that we're extending on this one is that all the property owners within the 300-foot radius that received notification of this public hearing would receive all the contact information for the homeless coalition. Since they were granted their temporary use permit, they have already gone in and improved some items. They put some screening, little landscaping around their outdoor area. They've had some safety materials, smoke and carbon monoxide detectors were installed, cameras, fire extinguishers, a Knox box, meeting fire department requirements. Some of the things that they're wanting to do, that they're proposing, should they get the permanent approval, is more of a landscaping and a visual barrier, both out front at the street and up closer to the building. So what your Main Street is up here on the north side of this. The parking area, it's adjacent to Main Street. They have an outdoor area that is screened in with shade cloth, not very visible from the street view. This is the one structure that we're working with. There are other structures on the property. Those are not part of this consideration that the building department or fire department have looked at. Currently, the parking area, sorry for ignoring you over here, the camera's on that one. The parking area up front. They're going to reorient some of the parking spaces so that it creates a smoother flow for traffic as it enters the site and circulation on the site. This is the main portion of the building, the patio, outdoor patio area. They have screened that and with some landscaping. There are 4 parking spaces up close to the building that generally would be for employee parking. This is the adjacent property owner to the west. And looking west on Main Street, if you were standing out in front of the property. And then looking across, directly across Main Street, and this is the Camelot RV park. You can sort of see the roof of the main building. And then looking farther east on Main Street. This is the subject site as you would see it as you were driving or walking by on Main Street. This is the outdoor area that they have screened. There is some landscaping and vegetation already mature and in place there, and their intent is to add to that. The adjacent property to the east and to the south, there is a church facility that is actually back to the rear of the subject site. And the church has 2 buildings for their facility. So that concludes what I would have to say. We do have a few people from the Homeless Coalition here this evening. For any questions, Carol Kwasula, who is the president of the board of directors, and also they have a new executive director who I just met this evening, so excuse me on the name. So they'll be available for any questions.
All right. Commissioner, anything of Jim? Any technical questions? Anything? No. All right. Commissioner?
I have no questions, really.
Commissioner Norwood,
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
What would be the hours of operation?
1 to 5, Monday through Friday?
Can you ask that question when
The
the
applicant,
applicant
yes. Sorry.
comes up and you can direct that?
I guess the other question I had was about the cameras running, but I'll ask.
Okay.
That would be good. Any questions of Jim?
No technical question from me.
No, I don't have any technical questions of you, Jim. The applicant would please come forward, or applicants. And please, if we may have your name for the record, please.
My name is Matthew Martin.
Would you, in the microphone, please?
Matthew Martin.
Matthew, all right.
And Carol Kwasula.
Yes, Carol, how are you? All right, the floor is yours, please.
The hours of operation are Monday through Friday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., with the exception of days where it's going to be below 35, and then we remain open for the 20 that are pre-signed up for use of the overnight facility. And then they leave by 8 p.m.
And we have been operating since November 4th. So we are already doing the drop-in center services as well as the overnight. And Matthew has some numbers for you if that's something you would like.
Yes, that would be fine.
Since November 4th, we've actually provided services to 1,594 clients, supplied 725 individuals with overnight shelter, and have been open overnight 32 nights as of 1/21, which is on track to far exceed last year's operation. From 1/6 to 1/21, we served over 350 clients, as well as 189 overnight services.
Yeah, I had another question, so is it all right to ask that now?
Sure.
Yeah, on your security cameras, are they running 24/7?
That's correct. They are operational 24/7, and they're on the DVR, so we can reverse them.
So you can,
back.
yeah. Okay. And what's the capacity, just out of curiosity, let's say the night capacity of the facility when you have it open at night?
So we have 20 that we're authorized to have for overnight services, and then we have 2 staff that work there to monitor and do fire checks, so on and so forth, during that overnight stay.
And the staff during the day, you said that they had counseling and you had job. How does that work? Could you just explain?
Well, we're operating as volunteers, so we offer a myriad of different things, from like case management to connecting them with services as far as like spectrum healthcare, shelter, clothing, food, whatever it is that they need to try and facilitate change. So we offer those support services, and then we also are working toward acquiring transitional housing, which is further in the future, but transitional housing which will get them out of homelessness is what is our goal.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mr. Sherman,
I had a question, I kind of lost it for a second there. In terms of people who are in need of this assistance, how do they find you?
Well, we have referrals. So we work with all of the other organizations within the community, like the Mission, Catholic Charities, so on and so forth. And we sort of bounce off each other and provide the individual services that each of us are geared toward, so to speak. So like we're geared more toward base services and immediate shelter versus like Catholic Charities. They transitional housing and more long-term housing. So we work together to coordinate whatever resources we have to facilitate change.
Thank you.
And then the thing I would add to that is with the overnight, emergency overnight, whenever we're going to be opened, we let law enforcement, public safety know. So all the law enforcement organizations are notified. So if they do encounter someone who is homeless, they can bring them to the shelter.
Okay, thank you.
Question, Vice Chairman, sir.
No problem at all. I would just like to say, I don't really have any questions, it's just a statement. Thank you for not giving up. I know you guys were in here a while back on the 15th Street project, and that will probably be one of my more memorable nights in one of these chairs. And we tried to get you there that time, and it didn't quite work out, but I hope this is the perfect place for you guys, and I can't thank you enough for the services you're giving.
Thank you.
Commissioner Matson.
I just had some questions about the landscaping, because you had mentioned that you wanted to add more landscaping between the parking lot, but there were some issues, obviously, because it's asphalt, and you wanted to do planters. Do you have a plan for that at all? I'm just wondering.
We do not have a
early
specific.
Days?
It's very early.
Okay.
And that may be something that we will want to go to an organization and like the Cottonwood Verde Valley leadership, maybe to take that on as a project.
Okay, that would be a good idea.
Commissioner House.
Well, first I'd like to say, I don't know if there's a representative from the Friendship Missions here, but I shout out to them for allowing you to be there and to, donating the property. I think this is a much better fit than the stuff we've seen in the past. I wasn't a big fan of the one that was next to Circle K. That was pretty small and cramped, and the 15th Street, obviously we had some controversy. And from my experience with this so far, I think this is a much better fit, and thank you for this.
And thank you for mentioning that. And I have to tell you that Ruth Chenoweth, who is, she visits us on a pretty regular basis, and she's very, very happy with how the facility is being used. And she is a very generous woman. For those of you who have not met her, very special. So I think we have a really good partnership going.
Any other questions? Okay. One question I had, a little bit concerned in reading, I guess maybe it was a newspaper article more than anything, that she's actively marketing this property to sell it?
She would love to sell it to us.
All right.
So, and we do have first right of refusal. If for whatever reason they did find a buyer, she would still come back to us. They don't have anyone that they're working with.
Right.
And what she set up with us is that we're going to meet every 6 months. But if she did get a proposal, she would definitely come to us. If we did not respond in terms of purchasing the property, she would give us a 90-day notice.
You'd have to purchase the entire property, including the other warehouses, and it would not be split out, right?
Right, exactly. But what she's doing, because it's no longer used as a food bank,
Right.
she's beginning to sell a lot of the equipment, which she said is going to bring the price of the facility down. So we'll see. She's working on some numbers, but she really would like to see us acquire it.
Yes, the entire property, which
Yes.
then you could leave for expansion and so forth.
Exactly.
All right.
Yes.
All right. But she doesn't have it actively listed on the market? with-
She does not.
Okay, very fine. I'll leave my comments till later, but thank you very much for coming. Good luck in your new job. I have one slip, Anthony Pugliano, and I'm a little confused. You marked out support and oppose the project. Which one?
So my name is Tony, and I own the business across the street from the current location. I also own the business across the street from the previous location. And both of those locations were providing affordable housing for members of our community. We're real in favor of the Verde Valley Homeless Coalition. We think they're obviously addressing a need here in the city that we found that we have. Unfortunately, we're just not thrilled about the location. And you know, when the initial location went in across from Stony Brook RV Park, you know, we didn't come to the public comment period. We sent letters to our tenants just saying, hey, we don't have any reason to suspect that this is going to have any ramifications. However, if it does, please let us know and let law enforcement know if there's an increase in traffic flow. And unfortunately, we had that. And some of the situations, you know, I can tell you about, we had a gentleman go to get in his truck one morning and somebody was sleeping in the back of the truck. I had a lady go to take a shower at the restrooms in the morning. Somebody had gained access to the restroom and was sleeping in the restroom. And the big one for me was I went in and found a couple of gentlemen rolling and smoking cigarettes in our laundry room. They had gained access to that. So you can imagine we were slightly relieved and then slightly dismayed when we found out it was going across the street from our other location. And you know, the tough part is that it's not business owner comes down to tell you that we want to get rid of the homeless coalition. That's not what I'm here to do today. But one of the things that I'd urge you guys to consider is that you all have spent so much time renovating this Main Street district and doing a fine job at it. And you've gotten it to the point where businesses are coming in and investing because we feel comfortable in investing our money in a place where people want to come. The other thing is that, you know, I can't go anywhere in the state now and not have somebody tell me how they've enjoyed visiting our Main Street district and going to the shops and the restaurants and stuff. This changes the aesthetics of that a little bit because it's not a permanent center for them. They have to come there at 1 o'clock. By 1 o'clock, they have to leave by 5 unless it's 32 degrees or below. And so they've got to get there somehow. And unfortunately, you've got Riverfront Park, Dead Horse State Park, all that behind us there at Camelot that would be optimum areas to go and sleep while they're waiting to come back the next day. And so, you know, obviously I don't think we're going to shut this project down tonight, and I didn't come here expecting that. What I'd urge you to consider is next time when the conditional use permit comes up for renewal, you help these guys find a location that does better fit their needs and the needs of the community as well. Because again, if this is the permanent location, they're going to need a zoning change and all sorts of other things that are going to go with it that are going to be tough. And so, again, we're not here to say down with the project. I'm just asking you next time, please consider helping them find another location that would be better suited, that they can continue to do the good stuff that they're doing.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your comments. Anybody else? I don't have any other slips. Okay, I'll close the floor to the public. Commissioner Dow, comments, sir?
I can appreciate concerns with location. From my experience, though, the homeless population still tends to be very well-traveled. And I don't think that positioning it here or a mile down the road really changes that, because they're still very fluid with their transportation. They get around. I can appreciate your point. But as I said before, I think this is a good location for it right now. But I would revisit it after we get to see what happens.
Thank you. My take on this project is that it could and probably will be a good site for this, or this site for this project. Right now, it looks undeveloped to me, and I mean, obviously, you guys, early days, it's not working from the street. I think that there's just not just for your neighbors, but also for your residents, there's a little bit of a lack of privacy right now, which you will solve over time with landscaping. So assuming that you guys continue to make improvements at the clip you've been making them, I don't see a problem with this. I just think that, you know, just keep in mind, you have to be continually building up landscape just to make it look nice from the outside. It makes sense you have utilitarian buildings, but that street right there really needs planter boxes and trees, and possibly considering getting that shade, getting your privacy shade in green, so it blends in a little bit better with your landscaping as well, just to make it so that when your neighbors do look at it across the street, they're not reminded about something they're worried about, and they're just like, oh, that's a nice tree. So sometimes trickery goes a long way, like light trickery.
Mr. Sherman.
I would say I think it's in a good location for now. It's somewhat central to a lot of different things, and I would have to agree that something to kind of soften, even though it is a commercial type building, something to kind of soften it, make it look a little more cohesive with the neighbors, other businesses, that type of thing. I think that could be very beneficial. Other than that, I think it's a wonderful project. I think it's a much needed thing in our community. Thank you.
Commissioner Irwin.
Yeah, it looks to me like the best site so far, and I think you'll be successful there. I hope so, and time will tell. Good luck to you all.
Mm-hmm. Vice Chairman.
It's probably pretty obvious. I think it's, like Mayor said, it's the best thing going at the moment. I sincerely understand and appreciate your comments, sir, because I know that wasn't that long ago, maybe a year or two ago, the Homeless Coalition put on a fairly good push, as far as I recall, to try and get a hold of some grant funds, specifically so they could try and follow along the line you're speaking about, I think. So I think going ahead, we can always improve. If better places open up, fantastic. If this becomes the best option, then I think we just keep making it better and better. I do support it and appreciate it.
Question for our director. I posed this to you today. As far as right to revoke, if it becomes a public safety problem, what is the definition of public safety?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if it creates basically kind of what it says, is an issue with the safety of the public, not necessarily on that property, but immediately surrounding it, where people can't even get through the area, anything like that, without it creating a safety issue.
Okay, so something that require police or?
Right.
Or a fire hazard?
Right, continuous issues on or around the property that puts the public in not safe.
We talked a little bit about the wording, a public nuisance. I know Commissioner Dow discussed, he'd had some calls and issues with the location next to Circle K at the time, with more nuisance problems than public safety maybe. I guess I'm concerned if it's, you know, they're camping out in the neighbors' yards, they're doing things. Is this public,
that could fall under public safety, depending on what exactly the situation is. This is the preferred language, but the commission desires to add nuisance as well. That's at your discretion.
I get, you know, I don't want to be opening a Pandora's box with that, but I know that when we did the 15th Street application, we had some neighbors complaining about the homeless population at that point was coming out of DES, and they were camping in their alleys and overnight and leaving a lot of trash and things. And I certainly think we need to, the city needs to have some strength to enforce against that and have some retribution back to the coalition. You know, this is very definitely the best location they've had, in my opinion, as well. And that probably can be controlled better, but we don't want them going over that mobile home park, or we don't want them doing these kind of things. And I'm concerned about adding that language, but it's pretty general. That's why I was wondering how far the public safety maybe takes care of the issues.
And I think under certain circumstances it could.
All right.
Or most circumstances it could. That I think that you were concerned about.
With that, with the public safety.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, I certainly agree. Unfortunately, Cottonwood, the way it's designed and built out, and we're a small town still, but we don't have, I guess there's never any perfect location. You know, you look at the cities and around the Phoenix area, even in Phoenix. I used to work down at the state capitol. You know, they had this industrial area, they have their soup kitchens and things down there, and there was constantly problems in the area. There's just no perfect location. I know we talked about when we had your first approval, you'd been up at the Arc, they tried it there for a while, but it was too far out of the stream of things for them to get to it. So they just wouldn't go up that far. Where on Main Street, this is the location where with DES and the city and Catholic social services and close to the mission, those kind of things sort of need to be in a concise area. And I like this idea because of that. Mr. Vice Chairman, I would entertain a motion, sir.
All right, I would entertain making one. I would move to approve CUP 19-005 with the following stipulations: that the project is developed in conformance with the development plans as approved at the Planning and Zoning Commission at the January 27th, 2020 meeting; that the project conforms to the Code Review Board comments dated November 21st, 2019; a certificate of zoning compliance documenting the completion of conditions shall be issued prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy; that the applicant provide email and phone contact information to all property tenants and owners within the 300-foot radius. The City of Cottonwood reserves a right to revoke the CUP if the use creates an irredeemable public safety problem as determined by the city. Any other stipulations which we would deem necessary, which we will not.
Yes. Question, Scott, before we do a second. Certificate of occupancy, they're already in the, you already have that, right? We're sort of got the cart before the horse here a little bit. I don't know.
Let me get back to that. Yeah, so that's referring to, because right now they're operating under the temporary use permit.
This would be the permanent.
This would be the permanent that gives us that. Yeah.
Very fine, thank you. Do I have a second to the Vice Chairman's motion?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dow seconds the Vice Chairman's motion. Roll call vote, please, Brenda.
Commissioner Dow?
Aye.
Commissioner Matson?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Dowling?
Aye.
Chairman Williams?
Aye, unanimously carried. Congratulations, keep on the good work, and we wish you the very best. Thank you very much. The next item is CPU 20001, Northern Arizona Healthcare Building Signage, and I need to recuse myself from this item. So, Mr. Vice Chairman, I will let you have it. I want it back.
Are you in the sign business?
I think he's related to the hospital in some fashion.
He's related?
Or board or volunteer. Full disclosure, I have no idea what I'm doing. So be prepared.
It's a great night to learn.
Yeah.
I don't know, I looked at all the signs, they seem fine.
Thank you, Mr. Vice
trust me.
Chairman now, and Commission. Everybody's favorite, signs. Sorry. Or, yeah, the Commission's favorite, signs. So Northern Arizona Healthcare is renovating a building on what I would call the hospital complex. It's this one right here. If you've driven by there, I'm sure you've seen the work going on out there. They're looking to propose some new signage. In 2004, they got a variance for signage to exceed what was allowed. I'm not really sure why they chose to get a variance, because we do allow it with a conditional use permit if it's approved by the commission. So a variance isn't needed in this case. That may have not been the case at that time. So they're proposing a reduction in the number of signs, but an increase in the square footage. And I know on paper it looks like a lot, but when you see what they're doing, it kind of makes sense. So the total square footage of the proposed signs is 1,065 and a half. The signs in 2004 were about half that, 572. So it's an increase of almost 500 square feet, 492. The signs that are proposed are for the multiple services that will be located in that remodeled building. So it's not just for one specific thing going on there, it's each individualized entity of the hospital. Typically, if it was a business or a building that had multiple businesses in it, our sign code would allow each business a certain number of signs, which means that the overall total square footage could be any number on each individual business didn't exceed what they were allowed, if that makes any sense. So we have a little bit before and proposed. What they did before on this wall here is not too different than what they're doing here. What is different is you'll see here all the different entities listed, and they had place markers on this one here. They just didn't fill them up. They just didn't have all those services in there. So now all these services are going into the building, and again, they just want to place them along there. Sorry, I thought these were going to show up a little bit bigger on here. Again, before showing that wall sign there, and then what is proposed to look like if approved tonight. That's the west elevation there. That's sort of that entrance area before what they've had here, and then what they're doing on the front, different sides right here. That shows that corner pillar where they're going to put the businesses along the wall here, and then on that side as well. And these are just temporary placeholders these buildings, again, be used for differing entities of the hospital than that. That's all I have. Quick presentation. The applicant is here to answer any specific questions you might have regarding exactly what they're trying to do. I can answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, Scott, I do have a quick question. Could you go back to the previous slide?
This one here?
Yeah. Now, on the right-hand side, is that proposed or is that existing?
No, that's not going to be what it looks like when it's done.
Will there be a sign there?
I believe that is one of the locations. I'll have to double check. We'll check with the applicant on that.
Okay, and the entrance is to the left?
Yes. Over this way.
It's over that way? In other words, the left picture,
I think it's this one.
well, there's so many mock-ups from different angles, I couldn't get this, but my question is, on the left-hand picture, if you go to the right side of that picture,
Over
that
there.
little gray sliver on the far right of that picture,
Right here?
that's what we were just looking at?
I believe so.
Yeah, down near the 340 on the
Yeah.
picture below.
Yeah.
I think there's just temporary signage there right
Oh,
now.
no, the reason why I asked that was that with all the signage on the frontage on the highway side, unless that's the same thing designating the different healthcare departments,
Right, they're going to
you
have,
wouldn't know,
they're
you
gonna
wouldn't know
have-
that that building entrance had all those unless you.
they're
saw
going to
it.
have more than one location with that.
Okay. All right.
All right, I guess it's up to me to say, does anybody have any questions for their director, for staff? Of a technical nature?
I do not.
I do believe we do not.
No.
Mr. Commissioner Dowell, no. Commissioner Matson, no. Commissioner?
No.
No. Commissioner Darwood, no.
None?
All right, with that being said, do we need to have the applicants come up and present or speak to us for a moment? If there's nothing really to say there, then I'm just doing really badly at this, but
Are you doing fine?
Doing great.
We're moving right along.
Jason Keller with 928 Sign Company. And, I mean, as far as the signage goes, what they're proposing is a lot like what was taken down. It's a lot of square footage, but the logo and the way the wording lays out with their new branding, the way the city of Cottonwood comes up with the calculation is basically one big rectangle around the whole sign. A lot of cities don't count that negative space, which you could go other places and they wouldn't consider it anywhere near that kind of square footage.
correct, yeah, when I looked at the panel with all the lettering on it, if you just draw a big rectangle, it's one thing. If you take out the lettering, it's another.
Yeah, like where the big logo, their new logo and stuff
Yeah,
sits on the building.
That's the way our code is written.
Gotcha.
That we do count that.
You know, they have same signs on each side of the building so that they're visible going up and down 89A. The other signs on the front of the building are only really visible once you pull in off of Willard and you're entering into the hospital's property. Otherwise, you wouldn't even know what that building was if they didn't have the branding there. And they're moving all the services from across the street and other satellite locations into this one building.
Any of the commissioners have any questions for the client? Or the applicant?
No.
Well, I don't believe we have any requests to speak on this item either. Anybody, if we do and I missed it, please let me know, but if not, I think we could probably entertain a motion on this because I'm not seeing much pushback. Or, okay. Okay. In that case, can the chair move making the motion? I believe I can. Would anybody else like to make the motion and spread it around a little bit? Nope. Okay. That being said, I'll do it. I would move to approve CUP 20-001 to allow Northern Arizona Healthcare to exceed the allowable signage requirements, subject to the following stipulations. That the project is developed in conformance with the development plans submitted for the Planning and Zoning Commission of January 27th, 2020. A certificate of zoning compliance documenting the completion of conditions shall be issued within 12 months from the date of approval. The City of Cottonwood reserves the right to revoke the conditional use permit if the use creates an irredeemable public safety problem as determined by the city. And that would be all. Let's see here. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
You gonna second it?
Oh,
I second
sorry,
the
pardon me.
I second the motion.
All right. May I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Dowell?
Aye.
Commissioner Matson?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Dowling?
Aye. Get back up here, sir.
You did good.
That was,
You own the hospital?
Excellent job, sir.
you've probably been there a couple times.
Yes, excellent job, sir.
Oh, you're
Yes, I
welcome.
live
Sorry.
there. Yes. All right, onward and upward. Next item, ZO 20001, amendment to section 418C1, light commercial zoning. Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to stand up here.
That's good.
So what we have, ZO 20-001, is a request to amend the zoning ordinance 418C, C1 light commercial for conditional uses. This is to allow livestock on properties that are zone C1 that meet certain requirements. We have found that there are occasions within the city where people are requesting, wanting to use C1 zone properties. It's really occurring, I guess, in what you would call the fringe areas of the city where it borders the county, which we already have some agricultural zone properties that allow livestock to be ran. So we're looking to do the same on some of these C1 properties that meet these certain requirements, mostly size requirements and issuance of a conditional use permit. And if they were to try to do any sort of buildings on it, anything like that, they can't have anything existing where the public comes to. So you're not going to get Walmart running cattle on their property. They can have a barbed wire fence as part of their conditional use permit if it's approved by the commission, if that's something that they propose. If you notice, we do require, or we do limit it to one head per 20,000 square feet of property area in the A.R. zones and the GA zone. We chose not to do that in this case because we feel that the people who are going to run cattle know how much that land can hold, and we're not going to come in and dictate how many they can put on. Obviously, if it became excessive and a nuisance, then we could come in and look at violating their conditional use permit. With that, take any questions the commission may have, concerns.
Commissioner Dow.
Just to clarify, just so I'm straight in my own brain, they have to come to us to get the conditional use permit
Yes.
every time? Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned cattle specifically, so is there a specific project that this is being drafted for, or is it just general?
It's more generalized. We have seen, we have observed cattle, but it's not to say that there can't be horses or pigs or whatever other livestock. We're trying to mirror what we have on our agricultural zones to not limit it to a specific species. But we have actually observed cattle in the field, so.
Okay.
Commissioner Sherman.
I really don't have any questions. Everything's pretty much been addressed here that I can see right now. So.
Commissioner Norwood.
No questions.
Vice Chair.
No significant concerns for me.
So if somebody's running cattle at this point on a C1 parcel, what are you going to notify them? They have to come in for a
Yeah,
conditional permit?
we would notify them that they have to go through the process to get conditional use permit.
All right. And this applies only to C1, right?
Yes.
What about PAD zoning? The reason I bring this up, I live next to a large vacant parcel at Verde Heights and 89A, and periodically there are cattle run on that, generally just in the spring at the calving season, but it's just a temporary use. But would that also not be something we should consider?
We can look at that, see what's going on, find out what that use was prior, what it was a rezoned PAD for what intended uses was part of that PAD
I would-
approval and go from there.
Yeah, I would encourage you to investigate that, just so we're on solid ground. I don't have any other questions. Yeah, I think you answered the question on the 20,000 square foot. I agree. That shouldn't be a problem. Anybody else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion, sir. Mr. Vice Chairman.
I move to recommend approval to the City Council an amendment to Section 418.C, C1 Zone Light Commercial of the City Cottonwood zoning ordinance.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second. Or I move to second.
Commissioner Matson seconds the Vice Chairman's motion. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Dowd?
Aye.
Commissioner Maston?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Dowling?
Aye.
Chairman Williams?
Aye, unanimously carried. Onward, okay. Another amendment to ZO 20002, Section 404, General Provisions, adding a new section to CC Tiny Homes. Yes, Scott.
All right, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Yes, ZO 20-002 is for adding section CC to our general provisions to put in some regulations and requirements on tiny homes. This was something that was taken to the City Council in July of 2018. They recommended we move forward with developing some guidelines for it. We've looked at what some other communities have done and how they're addressing it. We have had significant inquiries over the last couple of years on tiny homes, where they can go, what people can do with them. So we're kind of taking what we found in other places, where if you have it on a permanent foundation, no chassis or site built, then you can put it in single family R1 type zones. If you put it on a foundation with the chassis partially removed, look at it going into some of the multifamily zones. We could look at them being used as multifamily residential. If it is, because some of them will be small enough and put on a trailer, and if they are registered through the state like that, they'll be considered either a manufactured home or an RV, and our regulations would cover those. So it tries to cover a variety of situations that we have seen people use tiny homes for. We don't have a lot of people knocking down our door saying, I want it now, but we've had enough interest in it that we need to put something in place to address it when it comes. We also recently, this last year, approved the 2018 building codes, which allowed us to also include Appendix Q. Yes, regarding tiny homes. So the building code has some changes that accommodate tiny homes as well. So that way there's some stair slope issues and things like that. A lot of tiny homes have a loft where you need to go up a ladder, which wouldn't meet standard building codes. So they kind of relax that on that end. So by adopting that appendix with the building code, we can fall on the building department to make sure that they have a say in it as well. With that, I can answer any questions, comments, concerns.
Sorry.
No.
You mentioned, I imagine a lot of these are going to be put on lots that have an existing single-family home on them. Is there going to be anything in the ordinance about lot splitting? Like if somebody starts wanting to sell a portion of their lot, like is that something that would be covered by this?
We already have in our codes requirements on lot sizes. You have to have a minimum lot size to split it and sell it. So you can't just come in, if you've already got a single-family home on a lot,
And then build a tiny home and then try to sell a quarter of your acre off?
Right. Unless you meet the requirements to do so, but typically that's not going to be the case.
Okay.
I guess I would say along that line, I'm very encouraged to see this come up, because not long ago when I had to get off the council and get out of town because I couldn't find a place I could afford in town, I looked very strongly at tiny houses, and I saw there wasn't a whole lot there, and I kind of put bugs in ears about it here and there. So I'm very glad to see that it's coming, because I think it's going to address a need eventually. I'm good with this one. I do know along Commissioner Matson's line. I do think that at some point there will be some idea where people are going to want to start. I have a mom who's getting up there in age, and it's like, well, do I put my mom in a home or do I put a place in the back? So I think it would be nice at some point if we could work somewhere towards, if you were going to put one on but not split and sell the property, and it was the same familial use. I'll try and mention that later, but I think it would be nice to look at that eventually to allow for that. Or if somebody has a family member who can't get a place in town, they could live there or for some period of time. But I'm glad to see we're looking at the possibility of that.
Commissioner Norwood.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what I'm really looking at here as far as specifics, but I can see some issues longer term with this. And I'm not quite sure how it's developed and what's really going on here. I'm not against this at all. I'm not against tiny houses. I think they're a good thing, and I think the town should have them. I guess my issue is, and it's something I really, really feel strongly that the town should consider thinking very deeply about this and where you're going to allow to put them. I think it's poor judgment to allow this type of dwelling in a single-family residential zone area. But I'm totally for having this type of community as a community, like you would have a group of manufactured homes. In other words, designate areas in the town where these can be developed, carefully watch the development, put some good regulations in place. As it stands, the way this looks to me is you can put one of these almost anywhere. I don't think it's right. The other thing is, if you have a house, if you're a homeowner, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't see anywhere in what I've read, if you have 20 acres and you build a home on that 20 acres, what's to prevent that homeowner from building 5 or 6 of these on their property?
Because if it is in a zone that is single family, you can only have one single family structure. Multifamily, the way we define multifamily is it's not more than one structure individually placed on a property. It's a multifamily structure, which is defined as more than one dwelling unit in the same building, so like a duplex or a triplex. So you can't have a single family house and then 10 of these laying around the property. Our codes don't allow it.
Anywhere?
No.
Yeah. I still believe, though, that we need to really, the town needs to really think deeply about this. Where are you going to put these in? I think you're going to have a lot of blowback on this in the future if this stands the way it is. I'm for them, but I'm much, much more for controlling precisely what happens with these developments. I think it's a good thing. I think the town has to have them, but I think you have to put them or be able to put them in the right place. And I'm not sure that the way this is written and the thought that's been given to this answers my concern. We can't do that here, but I think it needs to be considered much longer than what it has been and look deeper into it.
Do you have specific items that you would like to suggest or specific locations that you're thinking?
Well, you know what bothers me is here's an example. You're going to allow someone to put in a residential neighborhood, as exists today, a 200 square foot home. Right? And you can even bring it in there, right? And put a skirt around it, or you have to have a foundation, I understand that. But then you have other types of housing that are much more attractive for people to live in, like a manufactured home, even if it isn't on a foundation. and you can't do that. It would look a lot better, right, than a 200 square foot house. I mean, you get just think about this.
We currently do not have a minimum size house.
I know.
Somebody comes in and wants to build the smallest house they possibly can under our building codes, they can do it.
I know.
This time.
That's part of it.
Right.
I think it's too small.
I understand what you're saying.
I think they're too small. 200 square foot house on a 1 acre lot. Built,
I think we have to be aware of private property rights.
If he does a side yard 7 feet, he can have a 1 acre lot with a 200 square foot house 7 feet from his neighbor. It's ridiculous.
But that's the constitutional right of property ownership. You can develop it in any way as long as you're applying the zoning ordinance. There's no restrictions, CC&Rs against that. I think that's discrimination, is to say, for us to dictate you have to have a 2,000 square foot lot or house on this lot.
No,
the only thing I look at, I don't disagree.
That's not what I'm saying. You can make a bigger side yard. I'm not saying you dictate anything. You dictate. We're dictating all along. Everything that comes before this board is dictated by the town.
Yes.
So I mean, you set up regulations and they have to be followed.
Yeah, I understand that, but to say restrict a single-family lot, let's say over on 14th, 15th Street around Mingus, that's maybe vacant right now, or at one time had a mobile home on it or whatever, but it's a single family, let's say it's in a single family zone, to dictate that somebody has to have a 1,000 square foot minimum house on that, is that what you're saying? On that lot, if they want to develop it?
No, I'm saying that, no, I didn't say that at all.
Well, you said you can't have a 400 square foot.
No, I didn't say that at all. I said you have a 400 square foot house. I think it's small, but you can also, as the ordinance is written now, you can take a little tiny thing and put it right on 7 feet from the side yard. You can control that a little bit better. You have to think about this.
Yeah, but if I put a 1,000 square foot house, that's going to make a difference. I can now have a 7 foot yard. I guess I'm having a problem understanding what really you're saying here.
You have an ordinance that dictates a side yard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but it doesn't say.
Well, you can have an ordinance that dictates how far you can build a 200 square foot house from
But where do you
set
that number? Who sets that number?
What? 7 foot?
No, 200, the square footage of the house.
I have nothing to, there's no question about the size of the house.
All right, we already have the setback requirements. We already have setback requirements.
If I understand correctly,
you're not understanding what I'm
he's saying he would like to have an alternate set of setbacks for development of a non-standard size home.
Yes.
If I understand, like if you're gonna come and put a tiny house on a big lot, you want it in the middle, or
I didn't say
anywhere within a certain range.
All I'm saying
Well,
is
my
that
definition is what's a non-standard house.
I see a lot of problems with tiny house in existing residential neighborhoods. You're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner
That's all.
Norwood,
That's all I gotta say.
we can't dictate side setbacks or any other setbacks based on the type of construction it is. It's applicable to the zoning district. We can't come in and say, if you build this type of house, your setback is this, but if you build this type, your setback is that. We can't do that.
No, I know that, and I was using that as an example, right, of what could happen. All I'm saying is that I don't think that tiny houses should be allowed to be built in residential neighborhoods in R1. Period.
Okay. Question I have, these tiny homes are manufactured homes, right?
Not all of them, no.
Yeah, some of them are.
Some of them are.
Well, yeah.
But not all of them. You can have, some of them will fall under that category, some of them will fall under an RV, some of them can be site-built, And some of them are also what are called tiny homes built on trailers, where they come in and they're moved here. It's almost like a factory-built building, which we would allow in a single-family residential area. So as long as it doesn't meet the definition of a manufactured home or an RV, then it would be looked at as a factory-built building, which could be brought in, meet these requirements, and be placed on, you know, depending on what requirement it meets, is if it can go in which zone.
Okay, clarify for us, if you would, a manufactured home as opposed to building one in a factory and bringing it in on a trailer and setting it down. What's the difference?
It's part of the difference is how you anchor it. The big problem is like double wides, they're not anchored onto a permanent foundation. Okay?
They are.
But your home is, right? Pine Shadows?
No, it's not.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
No. If you go to Pine Shadows, right?
Yes, let's look at it.
The house I had in Del Webb,
Right.
they're all on permanent foundations, but any manufactured home in Pine Shadows, all those homes are on stilts. And so the tiny houses in a residential neighborhood, the way it's written, have to be on a permanent foundation, have to be anchored to a permanent.
Okay.
As do the ones that can be brought in on a truck permanently, right? Now, technically, you could take any house from Pine Shadows and bring it to a residential neighborhood and install it there as long as it's anchored on a permanent foundation, okay? That's the difference.
Okay.
Only difference.
That makes a sense.
Right.
It's the anchoring and,
right.
Where you can't really move it, I guess you could, but they taking the wheels off, you don't have wheels on yours, but you're on stilts or whatever.
And the only thing, Bob, that I was getting at is that the real difference is going to be when you start to put these into neighborhoods where you have $700,000 homes or $50,000 homes, or $750,000, $500,000 homes, and you have a vacant lot, and somebody wants to put one in there, it's going to be an issue.
Well, I think it's an issue.
And I think it's going to be a real issue, and I don't think that I think we should have these, but we should designate an area for those and have them built.
Well, that would be nice to have a subdivision that Delphi do
Just say, give it more thought.
Yeah.
May I interject? I feel like I kind of kicked this off, and now I feel bad.
Oh, don't feel bad.
I actually am extremely pro tiny houses, in part because when I was in school, they were very trendy. But most of the ones that I've seen have been stick-built. And I feel like if this ordinance goes through with some massaging, you'll find that a lot of them will be stick-built, especially people who are putting them on single-family lots, because rather than thinking of them as plopping a mobile home on your single-family lot, think of it as putting a carriage house on your single-family lot. When I was a kid growing up, we had a house at one point that had a carriage house. It was completely separate building, but effectively it was a tiny house. It had a garage underneath, and the top part was about 400 square feet. And I think that these buildings can be good. My main concern is people building tiny homes for investment purposes. Like, I'm very enthusiastic about people, like I own a home in Cottonwood. I would love to build a tiny house on my property for my parents. Like within, not yet, but someday I would like to do that. And I would like there to be an ordinance in place that makes that straightforward. I am not interested though in my neighbors, building 2 tiny homes on their property and then splitting the property off, or worse, turning them to Airbnbs. So,
well, that's the thing. That's the other thing that I was going to bring up is that, the situation where you have a family member living there and then maybe they pass on or move. Now you have this vacant piece of real estate, with this little, so you're going to rent it out, right? Yeah. I mean, you're going to eventually just think about that. All I'm saying is we should think about it before we jump quickly into this.
I just think as long as everything is in place that you can't split the lot, that kind of fixes a lot of the problem. Because if you can't split the lot, you can't sell off the tiny house lot.
So now you're thinking like I am. You're thinking we should think about a little bit more. We should think a little bit deeper about it, right? Is that what you're saying?
I think the things are already in place to prevent the problem.
Yeah, I think that's, we've had we had an issue up near my neighborhood where somebody was converting a building into basically a living unit for their mother-in-law, but it was based on the fact there would be no ovens and stuff. You couldn't cook in that facility as such, but I think Commissioner Nar was hit on. At some point, you start renting that out if you don't want to put it on there. But I guess I get back to basic property rights. If I have a $200,000 house and an unrestricted subdivision that doesn't dictate the size of lots, and there's vacant lots in that site, that property, I would assume that the lot price would be too expensive for somebody to want to put in a 400 square foot house, but we have that throughout Cottonwood. I live in a neighborhood where I'm one of the largest houses in that whole neighborhood. But I have a house across the street that's less than half my size. I have one next door, two or three. I have other houses that are almost as big. They were built, they were sold years ago. And individual people have built them over the years. And that's what Cottonwood is. We're not all Cottonwood Ranch. You know, that's the new developments. They're more concise, they're consistent, and, you know, everybody's basically the same, and they're highly restricted as to what could go in there and how it could be used. But a lot of our Cottonwood area, particularly in the older areas, there are a number of R1 vacant, lots that could be, are open for development. And if you choose to build, you see it in Cornville, a guy out there with a $500,000 house. Out there, they even have somebody moves next door with a trailer. I mean, that they had to know that. If that happens, that's their problem. That's not a community problem. I get it. That's just my personal take on it. We're definitely going to have them. I can see places where they definitely could be built, and probably the lot prices would be entertain that, and it would be good to start filling up some of these vacant lots that we have throughout the town, and maybe converting some of these old run-down mobile homes that have been there historically forever, maybe redevelop with something like this. So I personally think this is a step in the right direction. Thank you, Scott. I think we're through. So, Mr. Vice Chairman, I will entertain a motion, if you will, sir.
All right. I move to recommend approval to the City Council.
Excuse me, I think you did have somebody submit a letter that wanted to.
Oh, no, I apologize.
Talk about that, and sorry for interrupting.
You got buried down there. Yes, Bruce Brown from Cornville. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to neglect you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, folks, commissioners. My name is Bruce Brown. Last week I spoke briefly in open session last Tuesday regarding homelessness. And I provided some data and some thoughts to potentially help the city to assist with that issue. I also brought up the issue of needing to speak about transitional housing. And I had advised that I have a plan for transitional housing as it relates to the homeless situation. I came up with these thoughts a few months ago as I was researching homelessness and transitional housing in our city. Tiny houses could be a great way to help the homeless situation, and here are my thoughts. Each tiny house could potentially cost about $40,000 from my rough, from what I have been researching. If we could build, let's say, 10 to begin with, again, where would we do it? Not in my backyard, zoning, so many different questions. If we could build, let's say, 10, strictly for the sake of transitional housing, that could immediately help to house 10 or more folks who currently don't have a roof over their heads. A total of 10 tiny houses could equal about $450,000, give or take, with a monthly mortgage of around $2,000 a month for that payment. So how do you pay for something like that? Well, let's assume the folks that would be occupying those houses receive monthly assistance. Maybe charge them one set rent each month based on individual analyses. Then hopefully there could be other subsidies, grants, or other money set aside that maybe could assist with that. That's where the monthly mortgage of those funds could come from. And with that, the city could still hopefully benefit a little bit each month, monthly. Also, the city could ask the builders of these homes to either donate their labor or their materials to help with the overall costs, simply for the good of the community and for the good of the people. Also, based on cost, maybe invest in solar for each, for self-sufficiency and eco-friendly purposes for the future. Possibly then create a paid position work internship with the city, where these folks could actually give back to their city as the city is giving to them. Give of their services to make a paycheck as they're able-bodied to do so. So to help possibly with areas like public works, or even create a new department of rehabilitation of sorts within the city and create a win-win for the local economy. Possibly also have a main area or even an additional building for meeting space or general services for the homeless in that situation, tying it back into what I had mentioned last week as well regarding creating a command center, which is what Bergen County, New Jersey, and I brought this up last week in open session, creating a command center where it's a one-stop area to help the homeless with several things, anywhere from mental health to their financials. Again, but not in my backyard zoning, I would leave that to the professionals. As a new resident to the area, I am very passionate about wanting to help make a difference, if nothing other than to share my thoughts and allow them to be heard by folks such as yourself. So thank you for this time. I'm very well aware that it really all boils down to funding and finances. Again, I don't know how that side all works exactly, but again, I would leave that for the professionals. I can simply just provide a few of these ideas. Removing one homeless client from the streets is a great thing. Removing 10 or more, what could that do? Not only for the morale of the city as it relates to the homelessness situation, but also for the client, providing the feelings of self-worth and so many other things that they would think, I'm sure. And that's all that I have at this point for my thoughts and for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate that. All right, sir. Now
it's go time. Okay. I move to recommend approval to the City Council an amendment to Section 404, General Provisions of the City of Cottonwood zoning ordinance to create Section CC, Tiny Homes.
Do I have a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dallas seconds the Vice Chairman's motion. Brenda, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Dow?
Aye.
Commissioner Matson?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
No.
Commissioner Sherman?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Dowling?
Aye.
Chairman Williams?
Aye. Motion carries 5-1. All right. Next item is a general plan annual update. We do this once a year. Scott, I'll let you.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, Commission.
We have some new members, so sort of.
Yeah, so every year we're required by state statute to provide a general plan update to the commission, which then recommends that to the city council. Basically, this is just a review of all of the objectives and goals that are listed in the general plan and where we have made progress based on those. Not all of them get addressed in the general plan because the general plan is a guiding tool. It's not a we do this and this is how we do it. It's just, it is exactly what it is, a general plan that gives us things to fall back on and direction to move forward in the city. So you'll notice a lot of the stuff in there may not have any updates to it or may not have any notes next to it. And that's just because we haven't gotten there yet. We haven't done anything with that. We just haven't, for whatever reason. And again, this is done every year, should be done at the beginning of the year. You guys did see this back in June, I believe, June or July of 2019. It was kind of pushed off because the scheduling got a little mixed up with it, so we had to bring it to you at that time. Now we're bringing it to you again, so we can get it back on schedule of doing it the first of every year for your review and recommendations to City Council. Is there any questions the commission has on that or anything that you see in there? Any clarification on anything? There has been a few things updated since you did see it in June. A few more notes added.
Okay. Ms. Dow, anything?
Nope.
No.
Ms. Sherman?
No.
Commissioner Norwood, anything? Vice Chair, anything?
I don't have any comments, but I'm going to save this for my sleepy nighttime, go to bed. Go to bed book. It's good stuff.
Yes. We spent many months in the committee meetings and for the council. Looks good. I think that we could recommend this goes on, and there's been progress and
Marathon, not
some things happening. I see under Goal C3, revitalization of the historic Old Town area. Is the historic overlay zone, that's still being a work in progress?
Yes, we are actively working on that.
Okay. And what is the historic, in general, what are the boundaries, historic district again? I know it's Old Tea right here.
Sorry, I was trying to find where you were at on here.
On goal LU, or it's LU, goal 3-5, continue to support revitalization of historic Old Town area as a community-wide asset and source of pride.
Okay, yeah. So we recently, a few years ago, got CDBG funding to rehabilitate the clubhouse across the street here. That has recently come to completion. That's done. We are working with the Historic Preservation Commission to establish an overlay district. We have established a boundary, which right now is basically encompasses the commercial historic district boundary that has been approved before, mostly for the parking exemption. We're going to start with that right now and then expand outward to incorporate some of the historic subdivisions and home sites and those areas to be within this overlay district, which the Historic Preservation Commission can then issue grant money from the historic home tour and provide some beneficial opportunities for homeowners to rehabilitate their homes.
Okay, good. All right. That's the only thing I, just wanted to get an idea of what was going on there. Like you say, it's a good bedtime reading, but it does give us, the city, some good guidelines to, for future development. And unfortunately, you're going to start building for the next one. We're pretty quick.
Yes.
This was done 6-7 years ago, and we started, and now we're already, you're going to have to start providing a whole new set.
It's like building a freeway. It's like building a freeway. As soon as you finish it, you got to start.
That's right.
It's going to take a couple year process before we get it to the voters. We have to get it to the voters in 2024.
Right.
So we'll be starting this in the next year or so.
Right. Good. Very good. Thank you, Scott. Anything else we need to?
Do you want to vote to make a recommendation on this?
Vice Chairman, would you give us a motion to recommend this?
Sorry, it's not in your staff report what the suggestion.
Okay, I was going to say, I was looking for that.
You're on your own on this one.
Oh, man. I'm going to see if I can figure this out.
Just that we recommend they approve the update.
Yep. I move to recommend approval to the City Council the annual update of the Cottonwood General Plan. I guess that's it.
That's fine. That's good.
Okay.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
I got one.
Okay. Mr. Matson.
We're taking turns.
Yes. Well, we're getting to the sleepy hour.
I'll second.
Commissioner Matson already did. Thank you very much. Roll call vote, just real quick.
Commissioner Dow?
Aye.
Commissioner Maskey?
Aye.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Dowling?
Aye.
Chairman Williams?
Aye, thank you very much. Anything else? Mr. City Manager, anything else to add tonight? Meeting adjourned.